in the crafting community, of which I am a member of the Dungeons and Dragons crafting community. There's one member who stands out, who's always being involved in everything that happens, and that is Lee Eddings, and he just happened to be the first subscriber to this channel. So I offered Lee the opportunity to get me to draw him something, and he asked, can we do the 4 big channels on himself? He has the Banhammer as he runs DM Scotty's Crafts and Games Facebook page. He's one of the admins there, and he's prolific in crafting and also getting the Banhammer in action. So we decided, okay, let's do a one for him. Now, the 4 people we're doing are Bill, which is Wylock from Wylock's Crafting Vids. We're doing Scotty, DM Scotty's DM's Craft channel. We're doing Lee, who's DM Insomnia on YouTube. And we're doing Jeremy, who's Black Magic Craft. And we're doing myself, the DMG Info. So I've put this video into a sort of very high contrast so you can see what I'm doing with the pencil work here. This video will cover just the pencil work and how I'm translating the photo mock-up that you saw into an actual drawing. So the reason to do a photo mock-up is basically just get an idea of where things are, what kinds of shapes and look you're going for, all that kind of thing. It doesn't have to be an exact replica of the drawing. However, what I did use was I grabbed some of their faces from their private Facebook pages, which I apologize for stealing your personal look, but I'm pretty sure they'll be perfectly fine with me rendering them in this way. So I started with the head placement. You can see I've just created circles for the head and work out from the central figures out to the left. Now the camera goes in and out of focus because we've got bright white light and not a lot of contrast in the original image. So we started with Lee's central figure, having the hammer wielding above his head, which in the photo mock-up it's not. And the photo mock-up I just randomly got images off the internet that are kind of within the look that I was looking for, and just patched them together loosely in Photoshop to get an idea of what I was going for. So then I did DM Scotty with he's busy casting a spell because he's the wizard, and Bill will be the elf ranger, Jeremy will be the dark cleric, and I will be the thief, and the central figure of Lee is the barbarian wielding the Banhammer. Banhammer of power. So using the photo reference, I am attempting to make the figures look like the people they're supposed to be. So I spent a lot of time just on getting that look correct. I am changing things like the beards and the hair for the specific characters. So Lee does have a slight beard, so I'm accentuating that a little bit, and I'm making his hair a little bit longer. Scotty obviously has a beard, and I've made that longer to give him more of a wizard look. Not that he doesn't look like a wizard now, but we're making him look even more like a wizard. And we're buffing Lee up a bit. Lee does not have a, well, that I know of, a physique of barbarian proportions. But I have not been sent any photos of Lee in any kind of form or shape that would show anything like that. So, yeah, I don't know. You'd have to ask Lee. So, building around from this, we're just going to creating the actual shapes and things of what's happening in the background, detailing the various aspects of each character's face. And from there, we'll basically, from this pencil outline and details, we will then move into the ink line drawings, which will then sort of determine exactly where everything is, and from there move into the shadows and the texture, as you've seen me do in previous videos on this channel. So I'm now working on the Elven Ranger, which is a Bill from Wylock's Crafting Vids. And yeah, so first thing is tricky to get photos that kind of get people into the right angles and things like that. So there's a little bit of trawling that had to be done. And then also a little bit of flipping in order to get something that was correct and then flip it in another direction so that it gets the person facing the correct way. So again, trying to draw people accurately so they're recognizable is quite a difficult task. It's something I normally don't do, but for this I thought we would get it to some level of realism, just so that the figures are recognizable. So for this photographic reference, I used a Legolas. So Bill is Legolas, and then for Jeremy, who I'm illustrating now, I used a image from Equilibrium, the film Equilibrium. Even though that's not got nothing to do with fantasy, I liked the pose, and I superimposed his head on that in the photo reference. And now I am basically just sketching out the details of his face, and then I'll build upon that in order to, get the look that I want from this image. So the fingers up in the air and the two fingers bent down, and later on I changed the second hand a bit because I don't like what I do with that, but we'll see that as we go. So differences in clothing and things is going to make it more interesting when we actually do texture. And this is obviously very interesting because I'm drawing myself. The major problem here is I drew my head initially too big. So this first sketch is too big, and it will need to be corrected. Amazingly, I now know exactly how much I look like my father, because from the profile, it's quite obvious now. You always think, when people say, "Oh, you look so much like your parents," well, you don't believe it until you see it in another form, I suppose. But yeah, my head is way too big, seeing as I'm actually behind the Jeremy character, and I am seemingly closer in that than I would be, so I had to redo that, erase, and start again. Of course, the camera's going in and out because the high contrast was not there when I originally filmed this, so the camera has a very hard time with focusing. In future, I should probably put something in the middle of the image for it to focus on, in order to, keep it going, so to speak. So I continue on with building the structure using a lot of different lines. So you can see there's a lot of different circles and lines and things in the faces. And that is to build the actual shapes that I see in the photos, so that you get an idea of the structure of the face, so that when I do the line work, I'll get the correct sort of lines and edge lines, and from there I will then work in the shadows and the textures and everything to that effect. So being the thief, he's obviously got to be searching for traps and secret passages. So the hand raised to check the wall is the whole idea in this figure. So Jeremy's one is casting a spell, Scotty's one is casting a spell, and Scotty's hand is actually going to be the primary light source. So there'll be a couple of light sources in this image, but the primary one will be Scotty's hand as he casts some kind of weird magical spell against the invading horde of whatever the monsters end up being. So now I start to work on the backgrounds and the look of the dungeon. So lots of different archways, stairways, big blocks of stone, all that kind of stuff is what we're looking for here. And, just getting all the shapes in place. So the arches, the walls, the corridor, all that kind of thing. Building all those elements into the image. And making sure everything's right before we begin actually illustrating. Very important, because you can make a lot of corrections at this stage, but once you start inking, you can't really make a lot of corrections. So it's important to get the structure of everything you want down in this. Don't worry too much about where the shadows and the texture and all that kind of stuff is going to be. This is more about placing of objects, placing of the actual structure of the image, beginning to play with things like perspective and all that kind of thing. I'm not too fussed and worried about perspective in this, only because of the type of image that it is. It's not something I'm attempting to be super realistic. It's obviously cartoony in its nature, the way they're all bunched together in the sort of film poster pose. All that's going to change as we begin to build the image further and ink it and all that kind of thing. So building in the stairwell, that's going to be a second light source up the top of that stairwell there. And as I said, the primary light source will be Scotty's hand. Now I did decide that I wanted a third minor light source, which will be the spell between Jeremy's hands, and that's when I made the decision to change his second hand. And because his second hand is pointing down, while his primary hand is pointing up, and I basically changed it. He's going to cup it as though there's a ball of light beginning to emerge in front of his medallion there. So Scotty, I've extended his beard so that he's got more of a wizardy look. I've left the glasses on, the spectacles, so that he again maintains that wizardy look, and working a little bit more on Lee's character there. So I'm not detailing the lower parts of the bodies for a very specific reason. Because the light source is behind the central character, most of the lower parts of the body is going to be obscured in shadow. As I've said before, when I do these sort of drawings, I use shadow a lot to obscure various different things. One, because it's easier and it saves a lot of time when there's a lot of deep shadow in the image. So you get the sense of what's going on, but you don't necessarily have to do all the detailing and all the hard work that would be involved if you didn't have the high contrast deep shadow that I use. So here I decided to have some kind of weird demonic orc things that were attacking them. This is sort of a profile view of one who's rushing towards them. He's got a few different horns, something like the Sith Lord, what's his name, Darth Maul. So we're going to shove a few horns on his head there. He's got a wily eyebrows. He's going to have quite the jowls with the sharp teeth. And of course, I've done some structure in the hand there as he's lurching forward. And we're going to also have another one here. Now, originally, I was thinking a lot of golem type creatures from Lord of the Rings, but I moved away from that. So you can see those in the original mock-up at the beginning of the video. But here, these guys are brandishing different weapons. So this guy down the bottom has a sword which will cross right across the image. And there's going to be a spear and an axe as well that's going to be included. So again, doing some work on the hands so I know where all the things are, the horns and the hair and all that kind of stuff. The detail for that will be brought in when I do the actual line work in the ink video, which will be in the second video in this series. But yep, it's building up quite nicely. You get a sense of the framing of the creatures rushing towards it, the different characters doing different things. Bill's character firing the arrow, Scotty casting the spell, Jeremy casting the spell, and my character checking for a secret passage on the wall, which you may have to write in some clues or something to find the actual secret passage in my other channel. But besides that, we're now just going to draw another weapon, so people get a sense of the danger that has just approached this party of adventurers. But plenty more to come in this series. Obviously, I'm going to go through stage by stage, and we'll try and sort out some of the focusing issues in future videos. So little bits of touch up now with the pencil, not much left, and there's going to be quite a lot to do in the line work. Just changing the hair length on Lee's character here in order to make him more barbarian looking. barbarian. If you wish to see future videos, click the subscribe button, click the bell for notification of when these come out, and of course, you can look in the description for all the different goodies and things that help support this channel. Thanks for watching.